Where do we find in our weekly reading the word Ayef, tired? And where else does it appear in the Chumash? And does it have to do with the word that we say in our morning blessings in the brocha Hanoten Layayef Koach? It's not spelled the same way. The brocha has Yud, then Ayin, then Pei, as opposed to Ayin, then Yud, then Pei. The first two letters are switched. Ayef versus Yaef. Is there some difference between those two words? So the answer is no, there is no difference. Both are biblical words. We find in the Tanakh both the words Yaef and Ayef. Ayef appears in the 5 books of Moshe only 3 times, twice in our Parsha, when Esav comes from the field and he's very tired. And he says, I'm very tired. And another time it appears closer to the end of the Torah, when the Torah describes what Amalek did to us and how we were tired, and he attacked the weak, the tired, those who could not protect themselves. Kol hanechshalim acharecha, and you were Ayef v'yagea. These are synonyms, Ayef v'yagea. The Jewish people were very tired at that time, and they were attacked by surprise, taken by surprise by the Amalekites. At any rate, that's the only times when the 5 books of Moshe mentions the word Ayef, and a few times it appears in the later books of the Torah, in the entire Tanakh. And the word Yaef does not appear in the Chumash at all. In the 5 books of Moshe it doesn't appear, but it does appear a few times in the Nevi'im and Ketuvim. So we have both of these words, obviously synonyms. This is not, by the way, uncommon that in the biblical Hebrew, and probably in the modern Hebrew as well, or in rabbinical Hebrew, I don't think this ever changed, we find certain words where sometimes the 2 letters are transposed, switched, and still the word means the same thing more or less. Kesef, keves, salma, simla, right? Two letters are switched and it's still the same word. Now there may be some differences. Sometimes the grammarians try to make a difference between kesef and keves, for instance. Malbim had a certain approach to this. I'm not going to go into this. I'm not a grammarian, and I don't think this interests most people. But the point is that this word, of course, is biblical, and the particular bracha that we make in the morning, Ashkenazim make it as the last of the short blessings. We make a lot of short blessings in the morning, and one of them is that blessed is Hashem, Master of the universe, who gives the tired one strength. Hanoten layaef koach. So the bracha itself is based on a verse in Prophet Yeshayahu, in Isaiah. In the 40th chapter, there is such a verse that Hashem gives strength to tired. Obviously, all of us, after being extremely tired at the end of the day, when we go to sleep and we wake up and we have the strength again, so it's a good thing, something to bless Hashem for, something to thank for, being really thankful that now we're strong again to start a new day. As most of these types of blessings that we say in the morning, most of them are based on verses, some are based on psalms, in particular 145th Psalm, 146th Psalm. Many of these expressions are based on them, and some of them are based on other Nevi'im and Ketuvim. Various blessings are generally, whenever you find the blessings, whether it's in Shmona Esrei or in other blessings, a lot of times they're based on some kind of verses. Like Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. Right? There are so many discussions why it was chosen specifically that way, not Adama, Aretz specifically. The whole discussion is actually can be answered in one simple way, and this is a verse. It's in Barchi Nafshi that we say on Rosh Chodesh. Lehotzi lechem min haaretz. It's an expression based on a verse. By the way, the Vilna Siddur is one of the best in that respect, to look for all the verses on which our prayers are based. On the bottom of the Vilna Siddur, they have, for even places where it's just a couple of words, not a full verse, they would often have where it's based on. A lot of it is based on Tanakh. Almost all our prayers are based on biblical verses, some one way or another. At any rate, so the brocha of Hanoten Layaif Koach, interestingly, was the most controversial brocha there is, because Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, says we should not recite it. And he's basing himself on Rambam, that we're not supposed to recite any bracha that's not mentioned in the Talmud. All the other morning blessings that we say are mentioned in the Talmud in the end of Masechet Brachot. It says specifically when you wake up, hearing the rooster, you say Hanoten Asech Vina or Asher Natan Asech Vina Le'abchin Ben Yom V'en Layla. There are different girsawot if it's in present tense or in past tense. Asher Natan or Hanoten. Then there is a brocha Pokiach Ivrim, Albish Romim, all kinds of brachot. There are 3 other brachot that are taken from a different Talmudic sugya from Tractate Menachot. I'm not going to go into this, but the majority of the brachot are taken from the Masechet Brachot, from the Tractate Brachot. And while there are some differences in terms of the order in which we make them between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, the brachot themselves, there is no difference. Everybody says the same brachot. But Hanoten Le'ef Koach, according to Rabbi Yosef Karo, you're not supposed to recite because it's not in the Talmud. So why was it then added? And whoever added it, why should we follow this? So he says it's a mistake. And that's what the Rambam, the Maimonides, believed in, that you're not supposed to recite this brocha since it's not in the Talmud. Now, the custom today is both by Sephardim, who usually follow Rabbi Yosef Karo, and by Ashkenazic Jews to recite this bracha. Now, the fact that we, the Ashkenazic Jews, recite it is clear why, because we follow Ramah, not Rabbi Yosef Karo, and Ramah says that we say this bracha. But the question is why the Sephardim say it? The answer is because they follow Arizal. And Arizal said that there is a spiritual root for this bracha, just like all other brachot. There is a need for it, and he gives Kabbalistic reasons for all these blessings. So it's important to recite as well. Now, it's not so clear that all of Sephardim accepted Arizal to a greater extent than Rabbi Yosef Karo. It's known that Rav Ovadia Yosef, for instance, one of the greatest Sephardic poskim of the last generation, he generally thought that Sephardim are supposed to follow Rabbi Yosef Karo, that they accepted it with few exclusions, they accepted generally the psaks of Rabbi Yosef Karo. So the question is then, why would they follow Arizal in this particular case, according to him? Those Sephardim who follow the Kabbalistic books like Kaf HaChaim, Ben Ish Chai, for them it's not a problem. Obviously they follow Arizal. But according to Rav Ovadia Yosef, it's not so clear. But he does write. There is a whole tshuva, a whole response on this. He does write why Sephardim say it. So he doesn't argue with the fact that Sephardim do say this blessing. This is one of the cases where Sephardim do not follow Rabbi Yosef Karo, quite a rare case. Especially when it's a question of bracha. The opposite is much more often true, that Rabbi Yosef Karo says to say a blessing, and Sephardim don't say it, because of the Safek Brachot Lehakel, because of some uncertainty about the blessing. I'll give you a couple of examples, whatever comes to mind. According to Rabbi Yosef Karo, if a person took off the talit even for a second, if he wraps himself in talit again, he has to make a new blessing. And that's the shit of Rambam. And that's not what Sephardim follow. Since there's a dispute, they don't make a brocha. Also, if a person was eating bread and left the house and then came back, according to Rabbi Yosef Karo, he has to first say the Birkat HaMazon on what he already ate and then make a new blessing, Hamotz Elech Min Haaretz, and then continue eating. But Sephardim follow, just like Ashkenazim, the opinion that if you were eating bread and you left the house and you came back, you just continue eating. You do not need to make a new bracha, not after and not before the new food. So these are just examples where the Sephardim do not follow Rabbi Yosef Karo in the opposite direction. That Rabbi Yosef Karo says to make a blessing, and the Sephardim don't make it because of this principle that Safek Brachot Lehakel. Whenever we're not sure, it's better not to make a blessing that might be bracha levatala. So in our case, it's exactly the opposite. Rabbi Yosef Karo says not to say a blessing, and the Sephardim do say it, surprisingly enough. Hanoten Ayef koch, a beautiful bracha that Hashem gives us strength. And may Hashem give us strength in the future, both on individual level and on the level of our whole nation. Our nation is very, very tired now, very tired from long war. May Hashem bring peace and renew our strength.